All right, awesome. So this is the last portion of the video, and it's on feedback loops. This is a 5-mark question you're going to receive on the test. The only difference is that the scenario given to you here is going to be different from what you're going to have on your test. So this is about calcium. The first thing you need to remember is that what's the difference between positive and negative feedback? Negative feedback is a feedback that comes back to correct what was already done. So it's a corrective action that's going to happen. In positive feedback, it tries to amplify what already happened. So what do I mean by that? In this scenario, I'm going to try to be very brief, right? In this scenario, Mary has not had enough calcium for the past 2 days. So it means that she has a decrease in her calcium level, right? So let's say calcium ions should be at a homeostatic level of 5, just for the sake of putting a number to it, right? In Mary's case, Mary has a decrease, so Mary has maybe 3, right? So if we're looking at this in concentration, whatever the number, the unit is, doesn't really matter for now. But Mary has 3 calciums instead of 5. So because she has 3 calciums instead of 5, the body is not happy. The body needs to maintain homeostasis, right? Remember, homeostasis is internal balance. So what's going to happen is that that information, right, is the stimulus. Now you need to make sure that you're very clear. It's very clear that this is the stimulus that comes first before the sensor, and then the control, and then the effector. So the stimulus is always the change in the variable. So the change in the condition. There is a decrease in calcium level below homeostatic level, right? So that's the stimulus. That information is going to be sensed by a sensor, right? By a sensor. Now, the sensor is usually a very clear and right way to answer such a question is if my variable is in this case calcium level or calcium. So the sensor is always going to be the variable plus just add the term receptor, right? Receptor. Guys, you can spell, right? Everything is here. I'm not gonna spend just keep writing this. This is not very easy to write. Anyways, variable plus the receptor. So if we're dealing with temperature, if there was a decrease or increase in temperature, it's going to be temperature receptor, right? Temperature receptor. If it was um, a, a decrease in, I don't know, just think of anything, right? Light. It's going to be light receptor. So that's going to be the sensor. The sensor is going to be the thing that senses the change in the variable, or that senses the stimulus, and then that sensor or that receptor is going to feed that information to your control center. Usually, the control center is your brain or nervous system, right? The brain or the nervous system are the regulatory center of your body, or of living organisms like ourselves. So it feeds that information to the regulatory center, and the brain or the nervous system then decides on what to do. So the brain says or receives an information that, look, calcium should be 5, but this person is not getting enough food or enough calcium intake, and therefore calcium has fallen down to 3. So because that has happened, the body is going to say, okay, we need to do something to fix this problem. So the brain is going to take that information and send some hormones or whatever chemical signals, and those chemical signals are going to come to your effector organs or glands, right? So effectors. Now, if you write glands or organs, you're going to get it right. If you write glands, you get it right. If you write organs, you get it right as well. So usually, glands or organs would be responsible for then correcting that action that had already happened, right? So the brain tells the glands that, look, do XYZ stuff to make sure you return 3 back to 5. And that's what's going to happen, right? This is a very simple loop. And of course, you know that this is a negative feedback because we're trying to return back to homeostasis. Now, always a very key way to know what's true, whether it's a positive or negative feedback, is that If you're trying to return back to homeostasis, it's always going to be a negative feedback, right? If you're trying to amplify something, it's always going to be positive feedback. So homeostasis means balance. Anything that goes away, whether it's negative or positively, we are looking at returning back to homeostasis. That's always going to be negative feedback. Okay, so if this was an increase in calcium level, all of these things would happen. The same thing is going to happen, but the corrective action is going to be trying to bring down the calcium level to homeostatic level, right? So that's a very clear way to explain this. Another example would be temperature, right? And this you saw in the slides that your teacher has explained to you in class. If you're dealing with temperature, if the temperature in the environment is very high, it means there's an increase in temperature. That's going to be your stimulus, right? What is the sensor? Your skin is a sensor, but if you want to be more broad, you would say temperature sensor, right? We know the skin is a temperature sensor, and that's going to be correct. So temperature sensor senses that information and then feeds that information to your brain, which is the control center, the brain of the nervous system, and the brain processes that information and then directs a response. And that information or the response is going to be carried out by the glands or the organs responsible. In the case of heat or temperature, it's going to be your sweat glands are going to try to secrete more sweat. Your skin is going to open its pores so that sweat can come out. Your blood vessels are going to dilate so that it can release heat from the blood. Um, just many things are going to happen, right? All of these things happening are because of the feedback, negative feedback loop in order to correct the temperature increase and return it back to homeostatic level. So that's it for feedback loops. You should know the difference between positive and negative feedback. You might have two questions come out on this for your test. And also, I mean, if you did the homework on beta thalassemia, that might be something that you might need to review. And that's it. That's the last video that we have for this review session. If you have any questions, please consult your teachers, but you should be fine, hopefully, if you really understand all of these things. Thank you very much, and wish you all the best.